But it's worked wonderfully for us all these years.
I think so. I think that's why the teams have also the teams that we have cutting across the different centers are so highly passionate and driven and committed and whatever. I think
Absolutely.
that is possibly the driving force for all of us. Good morning. Welcome to the second episode of Voices of Inclusion, an initiative by Brindavan Education Trust. I am Dr. Malathy Krishnan, the coordinator of the Jayanagar Centre of Brindavan Education Trust, and I have here with me Dr. Rajani Padmanaban, the Executive Director of Brindavan Education Trust. Today, in the second episode of Voices of Inclusion, we're going to talk about the relevance of balance as a concept in our workplace. Rajani, if I may ask you, with your years of experience in the journey of special education and in Brindavan, what is your definition of balance?
Thank you, Malathy. Definition of balance, now that's a loaded question. To give a brief background of how we work at Brindavan we take pride in calling ourselves a formally informal organization, or sometimes we call ourselves an informally formal organization, which means we are not very, very strict about rules and regulations. At the same time, we are not so fluid with our rules and how we work. Keeping that in mind, what does balance mean? So the first point I would say when we talk about balance in a workplace like this is, from an organization point of view, how do we respect the subtle hierarchy in the organization? How do we respect all the stakeholders in the organization? How do I place myself in such a way that I'm able to balance the ethos and culture of the organization, at the same time do what I want to do?
Okay.
I think, to me, that is the crux of balance in an organization like this.
So you're looking at multiple stakeholders here in it, and while interacting with them and working with them, looking at balancing itself. In fact, the way you started off, Rajani, makes me think, when you talk about being informally formal and formally informal, you need to strike a balance there itself, isn't it? At what point do you cut off and say, this is formality, and at what point do you cut off and say, this is informality? And a fine balance between the two, because you, as an individual, we tend to tip at a point which may not be needed, which is not required.
True.
So how do you balance that informally formal and formally informal, and yet maintain an informally formal hierarchy?
So let me take a very simple example, Malathy. So in any organization, in any place, we all do take sudden leaves of absence, right? I may not be able to come one particular day, and it may be an unplanned leave, right? In big organizations, unplanned leave, from what I have heard, is you report to the head of the organization directly. But in an organization like ours, where when I take off for a day as a teacher, what does it mean? The first persons or the first people to be impacted is my class group,
right,
and the teachers I work with. So in an organization like ours, what all of us informally do and formally do is put it up on the group openly that I am on leave today and I'm not available.
Okay.
So that means anybody who needs to know gets to know. It's not as if I'm only telling the person I report to, and she has to tell everybody else. So the balance here is in getting used to the fact that when I'm on leave, I need to know everybody. I need everybody to know. So I think that would be my answer for your question.
So you don't necessarily report into a person, but you report into an organization and
Absolutely.
let people know. That's
I
what
think
you
you've
mean.
put it very well.
Right. Which brings me to yet another perspective. Um, when you say informal, there is a certain amount of vulnerability that we let ourselves be in. When you say formal, there is an authority associated with it. If formally and informally balancing in a role is important while interacting with different people, I will come to how we balance in different roles later. How do you balance? How do you think, and what is your perspective of balancing between being an individual who is vulnerable at times and yet needs to stand in a position of authority to say and do certain things?
So, when you say vulnerable, Malathy, what do you mean in this context? I understand authority.
Right.
What I get from this question about authority is, how do I, in various situations sometimes, what we need to do comes as, yes, this needs to be done, and there are no two questions about it. So probably that's what you mean by authority. In some cases, it's open to discussion, and there again comes your balance, that at different positions or in different situations, I need to take different roles. So sometimes it's a leader with whom you have to discuss, or I bring in something to the table and somebody else may say, why don't we do it like this? And it's open to discussion. Whereas in some situations, this is a situation we need to handle, and this is how we need to do it. And that's where your authority comes. So what do you mean by vulnerability here?
When I say vulnerability, what I mean is I'll take my example. I am putting myself in a position where I am letting my limitations show. I am letting myself to say that I am likely to make mistakes and errors. I'm consciously not using the word failures because I don't believe that failure for me is a very strong word. So I would rather keep it, I'm going to make mistakes and errors which I can rectify later. I am prone to being hurt when I am in any place where I'm working with a group of people. Now, when I'm prone to get hurt, when I'm prone to make errors and mistakes, and when I'm prone to falter, I'm also showing to the outside world that I am not as strong as I think I am, or as others think I am. So I'm showing my raw side out to the world. And when that comes paired with authority, I'm showing two sides of the coin of me to the outside world, right? And how the outside world takes it depends on their perspective. But how do you think one needs to a balance? Does there need to be a balance at all times, or can it be skewed on either side?
Okay.
Too many questions?
Too many questions, but let me try to go one by one. Yes, as at Brindavan, we firmly believe that every person is a leader in her own right? So the teacher is a leader, the coordinator is a leader, and whatever the next levels also are apparently leaders. So, and at every level, we have authority. At every level, we have vulnerability, right? So if I take it from my position as a person who leads an organization, right? So when it comes to authority, like I said earlier, in many situations, I take a decision based on some situations like this that have happened in the past, and based on all stakeholders that have to be kept in mind. So it comes as, let's do this and let's go ahead with it. But even when I'm taking decisions in an authoritative mode, I am vulnerable to the fact that people may think that I am not consulting them, that there may have been other solutions to that problem, but I decided to go ahead
Right.
and do what I want, and I at that point of time I'm not explaining it to them. So there itself you have a vulnerability aspect. The vulnerability aspect for us comes more into picture when we have parents, right? Because at the end of the day, we have a teacher and her group of children, right? If everything goes well, then all of us rejoice together. But what happens is when we're not able to make progress with one particular child, or when the parent has lot of expectations and we are unable to meet those expectations, or convey to the parent that what you're expecting is a lot more for the child to do now, at that point of time, the person who represents the group becomes invariably the coordinator, like you or me. And I think that is where we are very, very vulnerable. Because the teachers may be new to that particular group of children, or it may be a teacher who has probably fewer years of experience, but at that point of time it becomes my responsibility to act like a cushion in between the parent and the teacher. And there I am becoming a little vulnerable, because depending on what I say to the parent or depending on what I say to the teacher, the others may not agree with it or may feel at that moment of time let down. And I think balancing that becomes difficult. But what I have learned from my years of experience is, when I'm conveying something to a parent and you as a parent don't agree with it, you may go back saying, the school didn't meet my demands. But if it is conveyed with empathy, if it is conveyed with, we're not giving up, not meeting your expectations doesn't mean I'm giving up on your child or I'm giving up in my process as a teacher. I'm only saying we are not able to meet it now. Let's look at other options. So it depends on how you convey that aspect, that I'm not able to meet your expectations. And then you feel less vulnerable.
Okay.
Because you see the parent trying to understand what you're saying. Similarly with teachers also, right? I feel vulnerable when a group of children is given to a teacher, and the teacher says, it's so much, I cannot reach out to these children, which is where I feel, did I do the right thing sometimes? But again, that is where I step back and put things in perspective, and very importantly, be open to the fact that I can change. The teacher is saying this is something she cannot do, which means I need to step back from my position as I was a teacher 5 years back. And I know this can be done, but maybe things are different now, right? So that is where I step back and say, okay, let's not talk about it today. Let's talk about it 3-4 days from now, when both of us are more balanced. So balance, the word balance keeps coming into all these aspects, right? And say that when we are calmer, let's talk about it and see if we can find a solution, right? So I think that is where balancing being an authority figure and a person open to suggestions, which makes you vulnerable, comes into picture.
I do get what you're saying, because going back to your two examples of parents as one stakeholder, teachers as another set of stakeholders, children as the third set of stakeholders, keeping all of them in mind, showing compassion, showing whatever empathy is possible to be shown, at the same time showing that there is a certain amount of authority involved when we say what we're saying. Not authority from the position perspective, but authority from, I know what I'm speaking because I come from some experience of interacting. That is what comes out, Rajani, when I hear you speak, because more than authority from position hierarchy, it is authority from experience, right? And how do you balance that experiential authority with a shade of compassion and empathy. I think more than vulnerability, and I get the goosebumps, more than vulnerability and authority, I think it is a shade of empathy, compassion with experiential authority. I think that comes up. And I think
Absolutely.
having been in Brindavan and sitting through various meetings that we've had with parents, if there is one thing that for me has stood out is, as a teacher, as a coordinator, or more as a coordinator, when we say that this is what can be done, this is what we can explore and look into to a parent, at the same time, give them the impression that the doors and the windows of the center is always open for the school.
Yes.
At any point in time, even if you go out of the school, enroll your child into another center, another institution, if at a point a parent wants to come back and discuss something, the doors and windows of Brindavan are always open to come back and discuss. I think that is something which has stood out for me in my years in Brindavan, and that is that silver lining on the cloud that one would say. So I think that is that balance of this is what it is, at the same time my doors are open, come back, right? At the same time, as far as
May I interrupt you here?
Go ahead.
So, talking about what you said just now, that we are open to parents and our alumni and teachers who work with us and
Yeah,
who've left
yeah.
us, again there comes this formally informal concept or informally formal concept. So I have a child now, or I had a student 10 years earlier who passed out from Brindavan in class 10. So the parent has kept in touch, I would say, with the organization through me. And there comes the formally informal concept. It's not as if it's a personal connect, right? She is in touch with me because she knows I am in Brindavan and I am in touch with the special ed space. So recently, a month back, this parent got in touch with me and said, my son has finished this. Now I'm looking for employment for him. Can you help me out? Now I don't know. I mean, I've kept in touch with what this alumni of ours is doing, but I haven't interacted with him after that.
Right.
I had to go by with my trust with the parent, that she knows what she's saying and I know this is a parent who doesn't misreport. Based on that, on behalf of Brindavan, I spoke to another organization that employs people with diverse needs, and I'm so happy to share that this boy now has been placed in that organization as a paid intern. I think that's where again comes the balance of, or formality or informality of being there to help others, both from a position of authority and from a position of by being with you and letting you know what we're doing. It's not as if I am sharing our plans with you. I am in touch with you because I may be in a position to help you. So I just wanted to add that, because you brought up that point of being in touch with ex-parents and alumni.
Right.
And I'm sure you also have incidences like this, right?
There are.
Recently, we had a alumni of ours who said, I'm doing a drama course.
Correct.
Can you help me out?
Yeah.
Maybe you should share that.
So this is, thanks for the prompt, Rajani. So this is an alumni who passed out of Brindavan about 4-5 years back, and during his education in Brindavan, we did find that he's got a passion for theatre and he would be excellent in theatre. And that is something that even at that point in time, we thought that should be his future plans of what he would do in the area of drama and theatre. Very, very happy to see that he's pursued it, completed it, and he's now doing his master's in theatre studies, and he wants to explore how he can help Brindavan out, whether it is annual day coming and helping us with theatre, or in fact we had reached out to him recently to ask him if he can do us a small capsule on neurodiversity awareness and how he is finding his journey in college, in higher education, and talk about how awareness is in higher educational institutions institutions. So I think it was lovely to see him following up and saying, ma'am, can we please finish this and do it? So somewhere, I think that's where and he knows that at the time when he was here, these are two people with authority. But then these are two people he can come back to and reach later on and touch base with. So at this point in time, we're not teachers, we're possibly mentors and something more to him than that. So I think that's where the balance is. Rajani, there's another thing that crossed my mind when you were speaking about teachers, of how one needs to strike that informally formal balance with teachers as stakeholders. Which brings me to one aspect of balance, which is at what point in time and how do we balance empowering a teacher, which is helping the teacher grow in their journey, at the same time letting go of some reins that we are having in hand, because when we let go of that, we grow into other roles. And if we don't let go, neither do we grow, nor can we empower anybody. So, and it's a fine balance, because as much as every teacher who comes into Brindavan has their own idea, it may not be a huge career plan, but they do have thoughts of how they want to grow. I may not have a huge career plan, but I have a thought to grow. But that letting go is so hard. Right? Because at some point, if I let go, I don't know what I'm losing out on. But it's important for me to let go, and it's important for me to empower the other teacher. What do you think are, let's say, a couple of aspects that come in the way of one letting go to empowering others?
Okay. So, like you rightly said, Malathy, when I'm empowering a teacher, or when I'm letting a teacher do what she has planned with the class and with the children, I'm empowering her, and at the same time, I'm growing as a leader and as a person.
Right.
So the difficulty there is, let me look at it in two ways. One is, if I let go, will it meet the objectives of the class? What has been planned for the class? Because I may have planned it in a particular way. Or
when you say you, it is you as the leader?
We as coordinators would have had a set plan for the class based on what was done. But the teacher comes along and says, no, I want to do it in this particular way. So then the worry there, or the concern, worry is too strong a word. The concern there is, if we follow this method, this strategy, will the objectives of the class be met? So that's because at the end of the day, we need to be able to say we have done our best with the children, and this is what has happened. The second one is deeper, because by letting go, I'm letting control away from my hand. Right? Because you may have planned to do something to which I don't completely understand your strategy, or very often the teacher says, ma'am, I have planned only for this 2 weeks. I want to see how it goes, and then I'll plan for the rest. Which means she herself doesn't know the entire journey of her particular strategy. But I have something in mind, and I'm losing control when I'm letting you do what you want to do. I think what has worked for me from that point of view is, one is asking questions to the teacher, right? Now, have you covered these aspects? Till what are you willing to look, or what are the checkpoints for your strategies, right? How often do you want to check in with me, right? And how are you going to assess yourself, the process, and the child's learning? Once I have spoken to the teacher about all this, then I think it's easier for me to say, fine, let's do things as long as you keep me informed. Earlier, it used to be, now it's been 10-15 years for me in this role, so it's easier for me now, but it was very difficult earlier, because letting go is not easy. Relinquishing that control I have, or subscribing to your ideas, which I don't have complete clarity on, is not easy. But how we have managed to do it is by trusting the other person. That is from the socio-emotional point of view, but also having checkpoints in the process. That, okay, this is something completely new, this class is completely diverse, so let's have a meeting every week. And I don't want you to come and report to me everything at the same time. Let's keep updating each other. We have WhatsApp groups or we have Google documents. So I think that is where the processes come in picture. If you have a processing, if you have a system of, if you have systems and processes in place where you're saying it is dynamic, depending on how teachers work, we are open to changing these systems and processes, I think it really works. And also letting the teacher know that, like you said, when you don't succeed in something, it's not failure. When you don't succeed in something, you're looking at what are you going to do to make that thing work, and that is probably more growth than direct success. I think those things have helped us in this journey of empowering teachers.
And it's also an aspect of balancing the positive strokes and the feedback given, isn't it? Because to help somebody to grow, you're saying that you're trusting them. The moment you say, I trust you, it has a positive connotation to it. At the same time, when there is a certain process that needs to be looked into, which is not being done or followed, then you give a feedback or a feed forward to go. So there's a balance of the positive stroking and the negative stroking.
And the negative strokes, I've heard so many teachers saying, we don't take it as criticism. It's actually a critique of our work. And like you said, recently some teachers said, I look forward to feedback because for me it is feed forward.
Yeah.
These are the things that worked and these are the things that didn't work and I need to look into.
Because when I was just thinking when you said it, it's hard sometimes to balance.
It is hard.
Because for me, positive strokes come faster. I would rather appreciate somebody for the good work done. For me to find something which I may find, but I may not get the right words to share that feedback. So, but it took years of practice to balance and say it's perfectly fine to give the positive stroke, at the same time a feedback or a feed forward to go forward, right?
And like Gayatri keeps saying, it's not enough to say what worked. It's very important to say what didn't work.
Absolutely.
And it's very important to know how to say what didn't work.
Absolutely.
And very often, we also now add on to what worked, what didn't work, and when shall we discuss to work on the what didn't work. Because I think otherwise it becomes open-ended.
Very true.
Sometimes it's important to give that closure depending on the magnitude of what didn't work. But it's worked wonderfully for us all these years.
I think so. I think that's why the teams have also the teams that we have cutting across the different centers are so highly passionate and driven and committed and whatever. I think that is possibly the driving force for all of us. And
I mean, along with this, but this is for another episode, the other thing that comes into picture is what is being perfect.
Yeah.
Because I think in the context of balance, perfection plays a very important role.
Absolutely.
And how do you achieve that perfection? Who defines perfection?
Yeah.
But we'll leave it for another one.
And to add to that, maybe a teaser for the next episode is, to be imperfect is to be vulnerable.
Perfectly okay.
It's perfectly okay. And it's vulnerable. And it's okay to be vulnerable as well. So I think that's where it is. But I'm sure we should be signing off soon. But then what struck me right now, Rajani, if I take away from what we discussed right now, it's balancing between different stakeholders who are playing different roles, balancing between what is empathy, compassion, shades of it, to what is vulnerability, balancing between when do we let go and how do we let go, to how do we empower a team, and and of course the balance between giving positive strokes and feedback feed forward. And for me, what stood out and something that I very, very strongly believe in is when you're balancing, you should also know that there are different strokes for different folks. Now, how do you balance each of the strokes that you give out in different situations to different people?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a lovely conversation.
And you summed it up very, very well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Malathy.
Thank you.
Thanks for being part of this journey with us. If you have any thoughts or questions about what we discussed, please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching and see you soon with a new episode of Voices of Inclusion.